Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before. The last beer that I had from these guys was very nice and I was quite impressed with it. So I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out because we're going to go to the opposite end of the beer spectrum for this one. So yeah, for this review, we are going to head up to Sundsvall once again, which is about halfway up the Swedish east coast, if memory serves me correctly, and we're going to have a look at my second beer from Noisy Bastards Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Pongo Pow. It comes in at 12.8% ABV, so a bit of a monster, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out. The last beer that we had from these guys was called Luscious Lou. That was an IPA, more of a West Coast IPA, if memory serves me correctly, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. So I'm curious to see what the dark end of the spectrum is like from these guys. As I've told you in previous reviews, for me, when you're trying a new brewery, you want something from the hoppy side of things, something from the dark end of the spectrum, and if you can, a lager beer. Having those three will give you a good idea of what a brewery is all about. But yeah, looking forward to it, and hopefully it's another interesting beer. A massive shout out and thank you in this review, of course, to Håkan, who runs the Instagram handle 6 Long Street Beer Cellar. This is the third and final of the 3 beers that he sent me so far. The first one we had was the Luscious Lou, actually, from Noisy Bastards Brewing. Then we reviewed the Dingmerk from Brewing, and now we've got this one. So yeah, really cool to try some of his local Sundsvall breweries, actually. So Håkan, a big thank you to you once again for making this review and the other ones possible. So for those of you watching, make sure you go onto Instagram and check out 6 Long Street Beer Cellar, all one word. So yeah, go and check out his photos. He's got some really nice stuff on there and very passionate about his beers, of course, which is great. So yeah, definitely cool to have followers like that who will help you get a hold of some of their local beers, because actually it was only very recently that I spotted that you can actually order some of these Sundsvall beers down here in Skåne now. So long may it continue. The Swedish beer market is getting bigger and bigger, of course, which is great. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this review then. A 12.8% Imperial Stout from Noisy Bastards Brewing in Sundsvall. So yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Noisy Bastards Brewing before, and hopefully we can add a few more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Noisy Bastards Brewing Company then. So Noisy Bastards Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Sundsvall, and the company was founded back in 2018 and they released their first beers through 2019. But the two founders are Ayla Javuzalp and Ollie Grott, and apparently they got into beer while they were in England. Ayla was working there as a drama teacher while Ollie was working as a sound and lighting engineer, and when they returned to Sweden they continued this work for disabled kids and adults as well. So they've actually got a really interesting kind of career, these guys, actually. But upon returning to Sweden as well, they found out that the beer selection that they were used to in England just wasn't available at that time, so they decided to fix that by brewing their own beer. So they're both self-taught brewers and they've learned from various books over the last 15 years or so, and they enjoy IPAs, stouts and sours, so they like a little bit of everything. But at the moment these guys are only producing around 10 to 15,000 litres of beer per year, but this is going to increase quite a bit soon because they've just secured a 1,000 litre brew kit. So exciting times ahead for them. But they also run a home brewing supply shop and a folk shop as well, and they ran a pop-up bar in central Sundsvall where they were selling folk and non-alcoholic beer, and they had planned to establish this properly, but COVID-19 of course got in the way of that. So maybe that's something that they will resurrect in like 2022. or something like that. But these guys still a very small operation, but just going through a little bit of a growth phase at the moment. So I wish them the best of luck with that, because I was impressed with the last beer that I had from them. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 20 or so different beers. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about this brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about them, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, I think that sums it up about the history section for these guys. Big thank you to Isla, of course, as well, for sending me the information on this brewery actually. So yeah, it was awesome of her to sit and type all that out for me. So big thumbs up to her for making this review possible as well. So yeah, let's get on and have a little taste of this beer then and see how we go. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one. Kind of looks a little bit like a sort of geisha, or maybe could be that one. It may be a little bit more kind of Chinese. The clothing and the hairstyle is maybe a little bit more kind of Chinese in that one, rather than Japanese, of course. But quite cool artwork, I have to say. A little bit zombie apocalypse type kind of thing going on there. But very nice artwork once again. There you can see it, Noisy Bastards Brewing Company. Plain black bottle cap on this one, and this is a 330ml bottle. I'm not sure exactly when this one. I'm not sure exactly how much this one would have cost through Sundsvall, because like I said, Håkan sent me this one. But if it's a 12.8% Imperial Stout, you know, if it's a locally brewed one, I would say probably it's like, you know, about 80 crowns would seem reasonable for this actually. So yeah, maybe this beer is about, you know, €8, something like that. So yeah, about £7.50. Yeah, but yeah, maybe a little bit more than that. Yeah, about £7 sterling perhaps, and then maybe about $9 American, just to give those of you watching abroad a bit of a price reference. I should have looked that up before I started filming the video, but too late now. But yeah, probably a beer like this at 12.8%, I would think this one's probably in the region of 80 to 90 Swedish kroners, potentially a little bit more than that actually. But yeah, that seems reasonable. But 330ml bottle, looking forward to this. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Pongo Pow 12.8% ABV, sorry, Imperial Stout from Noisy Bastards Brewing Company in Sundsvall. Up a little bit further north in Sweden. I do need to go and explore the north of Sweden a little bit more and have a little look at it. My dad wants to go up there, so I'm hoping that we can do that. You know, we can fly up there and have a little look at, you know, some of the, you know, like Oulu in Finland, for example, as well. Kemi, see where Nightwish come from, and do, you know, like Umeå and you know, Tromsø in Norway as well. That would be really cool to do the very northern places on the Scandinavian Nordic region. But yeah, that's our beer out then. Let me just line this up again and we can have a proper look at this. So yeah, my OCD is happy, we can leave it there. But yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from a big Imperial Stout, this one has poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. You can see there are one or two little bits of sediment in the bottom of this one, and when it's a small batch brewed beer like this, that's not a surprise, of course, because these beers are usually bottle conditioned. When we poured the beer, it had a little bit less than a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head. It has faded away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer and leave a nice kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, if we shine the light through this beer, this one is pretty much dark as night. There's just a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge around the very kind of rim of the glass actually, but it looks it comes across very, very nicely actually. So yeah, it is a nice looking beer, that I have to say. I like how this one, I do like how this goes together. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head, but to be honest, this beer is black as night. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil, and any adjuncts in barrel aging, of course, are going to have an effect as well. But the type of malts you use determines the magnitude of the colour, and when it comes to the wort boil, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But the first, you know, the magnitude of the colour is determined by the type of malts, if you like. But a big Imperial Stout like this at 12.8% especially is probably going to have like a 4 or 5 hour a wort boil on it, so I think we'll get some nice big brown sugary notes out of this one. But it also says, I just noticed on the side there, it says it contains licorice root, and the Swedes do love their licorice, and I have to say it's grown on me since I've lived here as well. So I'm becoming progressively more Swedish, I guess. So yeah, this one looks very nice. Nothing really surprising about the appearance of this beer when you consider what style it is, but let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. I'm very curious about this beer. I got a little bit of a whiff of it when we opened it up earlier, so let's go for it. Ooh, that is very nice. That is a very nice smelling beer. I'll say straight away, it's quite an old school Imperial Stout, this one. It's not one of these big, you know, sweet sort of pastry stout things that you're getting these days. This is a proper old school sort of Russian Imperial Stout, RIS Stout. It's something like that. But it might be a bit sweeter than that, of course. Remember, the RISs tend to be the more kind of robust and dry, bitter stouts. But this one certainly has a little bit more of a kind of roasty toasty edge to it, which I certainly enjoy. So yeah, it smells very, very good. Yeah, so on the how would we say, on the malty side of things then, to kick off the with the aroma, I'd say the backbone of this beer, it's got a lovely bit of a kind of toasty, well-fired bread crust to it. You can definitely get a little bit of that underneath the beer, so maybe a little bit of carafa or special beer or something forming the backbone of this beer. But I wouldn't say that's too that's too prominent in this beer. There's a lot of chocolate coming out of this one, and it's quite a high percentage cocoa chocolate, you know, sort of 70, 18, probably 80 or 90% cocoa, come to think of it. And you get a wee bit of that sort of silkiness out of the aroma from the cocoa as well. So yeah, 80-90% cocoa, which is great. I really like that for sure. But yeah, that kind of chocolatey aroma that you get out of this beer is very, very nice. But there's definitely within that, in the base layer of the beer, you do get a little bit of a kind of woody undertone to it. There's definitely some nutty elements in there as well, but you can smell the licorice kind of mixing in with the chocolate actually. Get that sort of aniseedy licorice quality out of this one, which I very much like. That smells very nice. It really grows on you, and it kind of opens up, I think, as the beer kind of warms up a little bit. I'm really curious about this. To be honest with you, this definitely, it's an odd thing to say, but it really smells like one of the smoothest stouts I've come across so far. And it's not overly sweet as well. It actually comes across as quite balanced and deep and complex in a lot of ways. But yeah, I do get a nice bit of a kind of brown bready quality in there. So maybe on top of the bread crust, the kind of well-fired bread crust, there's a bit of brown bread in there. As I say, a kind of woody, nutty type quality as well. Then you've got the chocolate that I was talking about, the high percentage cocoa chocolate in there, definitely some licorice mixing in with that, and then in the middle of the nose you're getting the big brown sugary elements to the beer. So for me, there is quite a little bit of a kind of high treacle, oily molasses kind of note out of this beer, which I can certainly appreciate. You know, that comes from what is obviously quite a long boil, so yeah, you can definitely pick out that highly caramelized, treacly molasses sort of thing with this. There's a wee bit of a sweeter caramel in there, a little bit more of a kind of roasty, toasty brown sugar. And yeah, I do like how the beer goes about its business in that sense. It's got a lovely, big, thick, malty character to it, but definitely this is a more old school beer, a more old school Imperial Stout in terms of how it goes about its malty business, if you like. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, it is pretty much what you'd expect. There's a wee bit of earthiness in there. You get a wee bit of a kind of herbal quality as well, some nice floral aromaticity, and also a wee bit of, you get a wee touch of grassiness in there. You know, the Imperial Stouts are not the most hop forward beers. I think I've had this one sitting for a little bit now. I'm not sure exactly when it would have been bottled and things like that. It says best before December 2030 on the side, so I'm guessing, you know, maybe they're putting 10 years on this. It would seem logical. So maybe this one has been bottled in like December 2020, which would make it just a little bit over a year old, about a year and a half nearly. But yeah, this one, it does come across very nicely in that in that sense. So yeah, the hoppy component, the green component is quite smooth. A bit of earthiness, a little touch of herbal quality. The earthiness kind of dominates it, gives you it. You can smell a little bit of that bitterness in the aroma, but then just a little touch of a floral aromatic note and some kind of grassy elements as well. But yeah, green component contributes a nice smooth edge to the beer. On the fruity side of things then, there's definitely a little bit of a sharp kind of raisiny note in this one, a wee touch of a kind of juicy plummy element underneath, some figs and raisins of course as well, and then you get a little bit of a kind of more round blackberry note out of this one. I'd say the most prominent fruits for me are the kind of raisin and the blackberry. That's what I get out of this. So I do wonder, could it be a little bit of Summit or something that's been used in here, or an old school bit of Chinook, whatever. I don't know what hop they would have quite used in this one, but definitely a wee touch of sharpness to the fruity characters in there. Like I say, raisins and blackberries for me, with a bit of plum and a bit of a bit of fig and other things underneath. There's a wee bit of a kind of toasty chocolate brownie note to this beer as well. You do get a little bit of that sitting underneath the fruity characters too. But yeah, I think we can. I think the aroma of this one is really nice, and as I say, sort of classic RIS Imperial Stout, this one. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this beer, so let's go for it. This one is the Pongo Pow, 12.8%, 12.6%. Oh, it's 12.8%. I think I'd be telling you lies. Yeah, it is 12.8% ABV from Noisy Bastards Brewing Company in Sundsvall. Further up north in Sweden, I guess we could say. Let's get stuck into this one. Apologies for lying to you about the ABV in this one earlier, but this beer is an absolute monster. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. I'm just going to say, hell yeah. That thing is an absolute monster, but it's beautifully, beautifully done. These guys are going to have no bother. If they can brew beers like this, and the other one that we had, the Luscious Lou, these guys are going to have no bother going forward, I don't think. That's a lovely beer. Seriously, go and order this one through Systembolaget. Have a go at it. And see what you think. I can see why Håkan wanted me to go at that. That's a very impressive old school sort of RIS, Russian Imperial Stout. I'm very impressed with that beer. I've only had one sip, but I'll tell you straight away, that's a really, really nice beer. And this kind of backs up what I've been saying on quite a few of the Swedish reviews of the smaller breweries. You can find some absolute gems amongst these very small and relatively unknown breweries. And that beer is something special. That's awesome. That's why I like doing doing reviews of these very small Swedish breweries actually. So yeah, have a go at this one, Pongo Pow. You won't be disappointed with this. This is a monster. I'm trying to go through in my head what I could compare this to, but I'm trying to think, if you compared this to, there's a few examples. We could compare this to the likes of the Amar Herr Fredriksson, or maybe the Lervig Conrad Stout, these kind of things. I'm trying to think if there's an old school Swedish stout that we could compare it to. Maybe not, because maybe the Opigård's Turbo Stout, actually. That's a lovely classic Imperial Stout. Nowhere near as strong as that, if I remember rightly, though. I think that's about 9% or something. But yeah, I mean, this beer would not look out of place against any of those ones. That's saying a lot. I mean, those three stouts that I've mentioned, the Lervig Conrad, the Amar Herr Fredriksson, and the Turbo Stout, those are classic stouts in my eyes. I would always recommend those ones. But yeah, this is it's a lovely beer. So massive thumbs up to Noisy Bastards for this. This beer's a real find. This is a real find. So Håkan, hats off to you for that one. This is something special. So yeah, let's try and examine the flavour a little bit more, but I have to say I am impressed with this. yeah, where to begin then? The notes that you pick up in the aroma of this beer, quite a lot of them transfer into the flavour really quite well. So straight away across the kind of middle of your palate, you get that nice roasty, toasty, well-fired backbone to the beer. And I do like that. That's probably a bit of a special B, maybe a little bit of carafa in there as well. But I would say that the kind of roasty, toasty part of the backbone is quite light and almost quite crisp in a certain way, which is interesting. In the middle third of your palate, though, you can feel those kind of thicker brown bready notes in there, and it's almost, you know, it's interesting because it's got a bit of that more wholemeally bready quality to it, but at the same time you almost get a little bit of a kind of sweeter rye type bread out of this. But if you go into the front half of that middle third of your palate, you know, if you go to the dead centre of your tongue and follow the line forward, you will get a little bit of a kind of nutty note out of this one. It's almost got a wee kind of like tobacco-y edge to it, and you know, I'm thinking the flavour that I get out of it is a little bit like how tobacco smells. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, honestly, and it's just, you know, I know what tobacco smells like, though. I love the smell of tobacco, actually, just like, you know, tobacco out of the bag. But you know, it really has a little bit of that kind of vibe to it. But underneath, of course, you get a slightly woody sort of undertone to the beer as well, which is really interesting. So yeah, some interesting stuff going on in the some interesting stuff going on with the middle third of your palate here. Some really nice undertones to this beer. But yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired backbone, some brown wholemeal bread sitting on top, maybe a little bit of a kind of sweet rye bread type quality in there, and on the front half of that middle third of your palate, you know, a bit of woodiness, a little bit of tobacco almost, and a wee touch of nuttiness. Really interesting. On top of that, though, we start to get the kind of licoricey and chocolatey notes, so let's look at that. So yeah, on the, as I say, on these, on top of that kind of bready layer, you can feel a lovely, smooth, almost silky, chocolatey layer out of this one. And it's interesting because there is a wee bit of a spectrum to the chocolate, and the back, in the back half of that middle third of your palate, it's got a little bit more of a kind of high cocoa, you know, at sort of 80-90% cocoa chocolate there. You do get a wee bit more bitterness out of it in that sense, but as you move further forward, it goes underneath the brown sugary layer, of course, and then you start to get some more milky chocolate out of it on the kind of front half. There's almost one or two little vanilla components to that, to the chocolate on the front half of that middle third of your palate. But in the how would you say, in the very centre of your palate, you've got a nice sort of base layer of, you can feel in the middle of the chocolate. That's when you get the licorice out of this one, and it's quite an oily licorice. I don't know exactly what licorice root is, to be quite honest with you, because I know that quite a few breweries, when they use licorice in the beers, it tends to be the syrup that they put in, and licorice syrup, of course, is a clear thing. You know, it's aniseed, it's basically an aniseed syrup, and it really just, it tastes like that, so it doesn't really, the licorice that you get out of this doesn't really taste any different to what we've had before. But the thing I like about this beer as well is that they've got the licorice just at the right level. It's not too powerful. I've had one or two licorice stouts before where it's extremely powerful, and I like, you know, I can appreciate that a bit, but these guys have managed, in this beer, they've managed to make it a little bit more just like a kind of subtlety and just add even more complexity to it. So I like how that goes together. So yeah, dark chocolate, milky chocolate in the middle, you've got a bit of the licorice and some of the kind of drier elements of the chocolate sitting underneath. On top of the licorice, though, this is where you get the big brown sugary notes. So you can feel that big oily, treacly molasses note to the beer as well. And again, this indicates a long boil, you know, a 4 or 5 hour wort boil, and it's lovely. It really is nice. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you get that highly concentrated, treacly molasses sort of thing. As you move further out from it, it kind of mellows out a little bit, and then as you move towards the kind of the extremities of your palate, you'll get a little bit more of a roasty, toasty brown sugar, maybe even a little bit of a biscuity note. So there's quite a bit of that going on in this beer too, which is very nice, and it does dry out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. That roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty backbone gets a little bit more, it gets a little bit more kind of intense, if you like, the further you go into the aftertaste. But I think we've described the middle third of the palate quite well in this one now, and that's where the vast majority of the complexity in this beer is. So yeah, on to the back third of the palate then. So on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit more of a kind of bready, cakey build up on this, and you can feel a bit of the toasty grain on top of that too. But then the back third of your palate, again, you can feel a bit more, you get a bit more of the bread, well-fired bread crust out. Again, you get a bit more of a kind of grainy, bready quality, and sitting on top of that, you get the kind of more yeasty elements of the beer. So you can feel that nice, slightly taller, yeasty element on the beer there too, and it feels a little bit more kind of airy. So when you start at the back of the palate, the beer's kind of quite tall, if you like, but the flavour condenses down. But then in the middle third of your palate, it condenses down quite a bit. But I would say this is one of the thicker Imperial stouts I've come across in recent times. And when you consider that it's a more old school Imperial stout that doesn't have, you know, the oats and the wheat and stuff in it to thicken it up, that makes it even more impressive. Although probably the licorice will give you a good chunk of the kind of oiliness that you're getting out of this one. That makes sense. So yeah, bear that in mind with this one. But yeah, the malty side of that beer is lovely, but I think we've covered, as I say, the yeasty and malty side of things quite well. Hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of quite a strong earthiness there. The hops actually do have a bit more presence to them in the flavour than they do in the aroma. Maybe the licorice is kind of sort of drowning that out a little bit, and I just say that from experience with other licorice stouts. But yeah, as you move further forward on this one, it smoothens out quite a little bit. Then as you push further forward along the sides of the palate, you do get a bit of herbal quality in there incidentally, but as you reach the front corners of the palate, you can detect a little bit of a floral aromatic note, and then round the front curve of the tongue, there is a wee bit of a kind of more zesty, grassy type quality pushing its way out of this one, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, I like how this one goes together in that sense too. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer as well though is very, very nice. So let's focus on that front third of your palate then. Border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a bit of a kind of cakey element to the beer. It's got a bit of a toasty, chocolate brownie kind of element to it this time though. Then you can feel the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of toasty and black malty underneath, and then on top of that you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters push their way out of the beer. So yeah, I really like how that side of things goes together as well. But the fruity part of the beer, let's examine that a wee bit more closely. So the fruity side of the beer for me, there's a nice little bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness to it. In the beginning, you get a wee bit of a juicy kind of plum underneath, and there's a wee bit of a sort of figgy there's a wee bit of a kind of figgy and black curranty element underneath to this one as well. But as you move, it sort of starts on the top of the back half, you get a little bit of a raisiny note, wee bit of a kind of plummy character underneath, as I say. Then it gets a bit more figgy as you go further forward. Then into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you get a little bit more of a kind of black curranty element, then a wee bit of a more oily blackberry bit on top of that. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is really nice. It's got a little bit of sweet sharpness to it. It's got some nice oiliness in there as well, which is great. And it just really works very, very nicely. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer gives you a wee bit more contrast to everything else that's going on. But this is one of these beers it's so complex and it's just so well done. This one gets a massive, massive thumbs up from me. This is, as I say, this beer, it kind of embodies the reason why I like to introduce the very small Swedish breweries on the channel, because you can find things like this. But yeah, awesome beer, this one. The Pongo Pow, 12.8% ABV. So yeah, let's round off the review then a little bit with the mouthfeel of the beer. So this one, no question about it being full-bodied. It's pushing the top end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's got a big oiliness and slickness to it, but at the same time it maintains the kind of the smoothness to a degree that you want of a big imperial stout like this. There's a bit of the dryness underneath this as well. In terms of hoppy bitterness, what can we say? Well, the IBU of the beer, it's difficult to say. It's a little bit difficult to say. I mean, it's got a wee bit of, you know, maybe it's maybe about 70, 80 IBUs, something like that. There's a little bit of both things going on there. You're getting some bitterness from some of it coming from the hoppy side of things, the earthy side of the hops, and you've also got that roasty, toasty, black malty side of things in there as well that's contributing to the bitterness. So I want to say this is maybe 80-ish IBUs. It doesn't quite feel like it's 100, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it is. But I think the kind of the malty side of the beer, the sweetness of the malts, and the kind of oiliness of the licorice and things sort of make it seem a little bit sweeter. So yeah, I think some of the sweetness is maybe sort of countering the bitterness in a little sense, but it's got a lovely big oily fruity character to it. As I say, a little bit of sharpness and quite a lot of nice juicy sweetness underneath, but it's just an awesome beer, this one. So Håkan, a huge thank you to you for sending me this one. I never would have known about this beer otherwise. So guys, if you are watching from Sweden, let me know some of your local breweries and some of the best local beers you can find. As I say, some real gems in random places across the country. You know, 750, 800 breweries these days. And then there's some beers out there that have just not really been discovered yet. So yeah, have a go at this one. This is definitely one of the best beers I've had from the very small Swedish breweries. I would go as far as that with this one. Really enjoyed this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that then. So this one was the Pongo Pow, a 12.8% Imperial Stout with licorice root apparently, from Noisy Bastards Brewing Company in Sundsvall, in the north of Sweden. So yeah, check out this brewery if you get the chance, and if you can get a hold of this beer, definitely worth it. I think it will be about 80 crowns or 90 crowns, something like that. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Noisy Bastards Brewing Company. We will of course return to these guys at some point soon. I'll need to try some of their other beers. Haven't had this one, of course. I was impressed with the first one. That one was good, but this one kind of blew that out of the water, I have to say. So yeah, I need to see what else these guys have, because it seems that they really know what they're doing. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Make sure that you go and follow Håkan on Instagram as well, 6 Longstreet Beer Cellar. I'll try and remember to put the link to his handle in the video description below. Thank you again. I'll catch you guys later. Awesome beer, this, ridiculously good. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.